All right. Welcome on in, guys. I'm going to give it a few minutes here for everybody to trickle in, and we'll get started in just a minute here. Hope everyone's enjoying this nice break from the heat today. Okay. Oh, I'm not talking to anybody, am I? Oh, thought I was muted there. Technology. Okay. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? It looks like we have a decent amount of attendees here. Let's see. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Microsoft webinar. Today is Word 101. I know I always take something from these no matter what the level is, so I'm sure it'll be a big help to anyone looking to get a little bit more acquainted with Word. And be sure to be on the lookout for our next event in August. It's going to be Visio, Microsoft Visio. It is a lot of flowcharts, a lot of process planning, great for anybody looking to implement new processes and spread them throughout the organization. So great communication tool there. Be sure to join in next month there. My name is Jacob Heath. I'm an account manager here at CompuWorks. And, looking forward to this webinar today. For anyone who has a question, please use the Q&A button in Zoom. It's right at the bottom next to the chat button. It'll bring up a dialog box where you can type in your question right there. Or if you don't feel comfortable there and you feel a little bit more comfortable with chat, you can use that as well. We'll try and get to as many questions as possible during the webinar, but at the end, we've allotted some time there to get any questions we've missed as well. All right, and alongside me today is CompuWorks founding partner, Alan Bauman. Alan.
All right, well, thanks, Jacob. And yeah, nice to be out of the sweltering heat of the past few days and taking a little word training. So it looks like we have a nice little crowd here. Seeing some familiar names. It looks like we've got some regulars in the group, which is nice to see. So I don't have a ton to say. I think, as always, I'm looking forward to Jolynn's content. Jolynn Reen is our instructor today. You guys who have been here before, I certainly recognize Jolynn. She's had a pretty good string of sessions here. I don't know how many months in a row it's been, Jolynn. It's been a few. You've been doing these, yeah, which is nice. We love having your sessions. One of the things that I love about what Jolynn does for us, and she usually includes a workbook, which is helpful. And so, as always, we'll post a recording of the webinar probably tomorrow. We'll send out a notification, a follow-up survey. If you have a chance to fill that out, that would be great. But the recording will also include the workbook materials. So, you don't feel like you got to copy every little note down. You'll have the exact same, content that Jolynn's going to show you on the screen today. You'll have in that workbook. So, without further ado, I think folks know Jolynn. She's been doing this for a long time. She's super good at what she does, and I'm just going to throw it over to you. So thanks, Jolynn, for being here again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Alan. So welcome everybody to Microsoft Word. I am a person that lives and breathes in Microsoft Word because I do a lot of handouts like the one that Alan was just talking about that you'll receive. Also, when you're using programs like Outlook and you're composing an email and things like that, you're actually using Microsoft Word. A lot of the features with Microsoft Word are also going to be carrying over to your other programs like PowerPoint, Excel. So anything that you learn here today is going to be a foundation for all of your other apps that you use as well. So any shortcuts and different things that I refer to today, those are universal. Most of the shortcuts that we have are universal, but there will be some features that I mentioned today that aren't available in all the programs. So I'll make sure that I mention that as we go through those today. So I have a practice file open that I'm going to be referring to today. And I really like to start out just by talking about what everything is on the screen, just to give you a quick rundown. So starting at the top left, I do have this saved to a cloud, which I'll talk a little bit about that. But so at the top left, you are seeing the quick access toolbar. And on that toolbar, it is doing an auto save. And that's because I have this saved on my OneDrive, which is a cloud location. Otherwise, you could, of course, click on your save icon when you want to save changes. We'll get to saving here in just a second. Across the top, of course, you always have your title bar where it always tells you the name of your active document and all of your normal things that you'll see with the search, and your on the right-hand side, your profile circle and all of that. There is one thing on the top right, though, that I do want to mention, just in case you're not familiar with it, and that's that square with the up arrow. When you are in some of your Microsoft apps, you will see that you can control your ribbon from that drop-down menu. We can actually hide the ribbon from here, but during our session, I'm going to make sure that I can have you see the full ribbon. So I actually have it on the show tabs and commands. Okay, just so you're aware of that. And then, of course, you get your ribbon, which is typical for any of your Microsoft applications that you're using. You will see a few different tabs that you may not see in other programs, like the design tab, the reference tab, the mailings tab. Those are things that are not going to be available in your other programs. We won't use the references and the mailings today, but the references tab is where you can do table of contents and indexes and things like that. We do cover that in a different session. The mailings tab is where you could do labels, you could do envelopes, you can do just a mail merge letters and things like that. So we'll get to kind of working with different tools on each of the tabs today, but our main focus is going to be on the Home tab. The Home tab always gives us the most common commands, depending on, of course, which program you're in. And then if you look at my screen on the left-hand side, I have open what is called the navigation pane. This is going to be a very important part of using Microsoft Word. If you do not see it when you open up Microsoft Word, you can go to the View tab. The View tab of the ribbon is where you go to change the way that you're looking at things. And there is a Show Group where you can check the box in front of navigation pane. I'll get to the benefits of that navigation pane here in just a few minutes. So I'll come back and talk a little bit more about that here in a second, but just so you know, that's what I have on the left-hand side. Then, of course, I have my document open on the right. I'll change my view as we kind of go along, but at the bottom of the screen is what I really want to talk about. The status bar at the bottom left. The status bar, like other Microsoft apps, is customizable. So you might see different things on your status bar versus what I'm seeing. But by default, you will always see the page numbers. You'll see the page number you're on and then the total number of pages. You can also see how many words you have in your document. It even can let you know if you have misspelled words in your document. So we'll kind of see some of these tools along the way today. I'm going to do a right click on my status bar, and that's going to give you a pop-up menu. And from that menu is where you can turn on and turn off different features from the status bar. So if you're not seeing something that you would like to see, you most certainly can just check the item to turn it on. Okay. But just so you know, that's universal in all programs. And on the right-hand side, similar to Excel and PowerPoint, you're going to find your view icons. So we have a reading mode, we have our print layout, which is the view I'm actively using right now. And then we also have a web layout view. To the right of that, you get your zoom slider, which is typical in any of your Microsoft applications. You can zoom in and zoom out from that zoom slider. I usually work anywhere between 75 and 100% zoom level, depending on what it is that I'm doing. I like to be able to see this print layout view where you can actually see your margins. So this is a live, it kind of is like a live print of what you're going to see and how things are going to be organized, because of the fact that we can see the top margin, the left, the right, the bottom, etc. Now we'll get into those margins and stuff here as we go throughout the session today as well, because we need to kind of really cover what happens that we don't always understand is happening so we can get a better feel for what Microsoft Word does. because a lot of people say, I don't like what it does. Why does it do that? Well, we're going to discover today why it does what it does and how to change it. So other things that I wanted to mention is the file menu. At the top left, when you click on file, it opens up your Backstage view. From your Backstage view is where you can go and save a document, which of course, just like other apps, you have several different formats that you can save your file as, like a PDF. You could save it as a rich text file. You could save it as a CSV, those types of things. So lots of different choices when it comes to saving your file. But what I really like here in Microsoft Word is, just like Excel and PowerPoint, we have templates built in. So if you don't want to start from scratch, or you're looking for some ideas of how to organize something in Word, if you know what it is you're going to be creating, you really could go to the new category on the left. And from here, you can access all of the different templates that are built into Microsoft Word. So if you're going to be creating things like a sales report, or you want to create a business letter, things like that, you can actually find a template for that. There's a ton of newsletters. I won't worry so much about the cover letters, but there's also certificates that you could be creating. Microsoft Word can be used as a graphical program as well. I've actually been using that quite often these past couple of weeks with my daughter's upcoming wedding, but just so you know, you can always search for whatever type of a template you might be looking for. So if I'm looking for a sales report or a sales letter, I could type sales letter and press enter, and it's going to show me any results that it has built in for templates that are related to that. So I see that I have this business letter, and I don't have to start from scratch. I could just open that template and use that instead. So just so you're aware that there are templates built in, and if you don't have to start from scratch, don't. Look for a template to start with instead. That way you only have to change your information away from what they had in the screen. So back to the document again. I want to jump into really kind of what happens when we do data entry here in Microsoft Word. Now, just for ease of purposes here, I'm just going to copy a line. Oh, by the way, I just did a shortcut. There's several different ways, of course, to select things, but unique in Microsoft Word. I'm going to give you a couple of shortcuts for Microsoft Word. Can't unfortunately use them elsewhere. But when I can see my margin on the left-hand side, if I want to select an entire line, like this first line of the second paragraph, I can actually put my mouse on the left pointing at that line. And if I click once, it selects just that line. If I want to select the entire paragraph, I could double click. When I'm in that left margin, double click and it selects the entire paragraph. If I want to select the entire document, when my cursor is over on the left-hand side, I should say my mouse, I could triple click and it's going to automatically select my entire document. But I want to talk about one more shortcut on selecting that is unique to Outlook and Word and PowerPoint, and that's selecting one sentence. Different than a line, because a line is based on your left and your right margins, all the data in one line. But if I want to select one sentence, like maybe I want this second sentence of the second paragraph, I could click and drag to select it. But a lot of times when we do that, we get more than we expect. Instead, hold your control key down and click anywhere within that sentence, and it will select just that sentence. So great little shortcut for selecting a sentence. I do that 100% of the time instead of clicking and dragging. It's quicker and easier, especially if you have a little bit longer of a sentence. So that was just a couple of shortcuts on selecting here in Microsoft Word. That control click can be used in PowerPoint and Outlook as well, just so you're aware. But I want to talk about kind of when it comes to kind of that data entry side of things. When you go to type information, as soon as you get to the right margin, it does what is called a word wrap, which you're probably familiar with, where it's going to automatically wrap your information down to the next row. So it's based on whatever your current margins are. I do have my ruler turned on. Once again, I can turn it on and off from the View tab. So my ruler is checked. I am seeing my ruler. So I have the ruler going across the top and the ruler on the left. And the ruler on the top is dictating where my right margin is. So that's where that word rep comes into play. We want to be careful here in Microsoft Word that when we are actually typing, when we want to start a new paragraph, it's really just a matter of pressing enter. So if I have a paragraph of data like this paragraph, I just selected this entire paragraph and I want to point out something. At the end of the paragraph, you can see under the word fragmented that it has extra space there. We don't see extra space at the top of the paragraph, but we do see extra space at the bottom of the paragraph. And then there's a big space in between two open disk defragmenter. If I click in between those, there is another hard return. So there's a hard return before the two open disk defragmenter. If I select that paragraph for to open, you can see that there's that space underneath. This happens by default. When you are typing in Microsoft Word and you press enter to create a new paragraph, it adds paragraph spacing under the paragraph by default. Now we're going to see how to change that in case you need to change it. But we don't have to be pressing enter twice. Kind of in the old word processing programs, even back when I first started in WordStar, I'm aging myself, before Microsoft came out, all programs really kind of work WordPerfect. They all worked the same, really. So when we had a paragraph that we wanted to do, we would press enter, and then to leave space, we would press enter again. And that sometimes could cause problems. So Microsoft fixed that problem by giving us the spacing after the paragraph. So it's actually a better choice. Now we'll get into kind of the formatting of your paragraphs and things here in just a second. I really just want you to kind of notice some things as I'm kind of going around. So when I select something, if there's a hard return, we know it's going to automatically leave a space, so I don't have to press a hard return again. Now, by the way, when I'm talking about these hard returns, how do you know there's a hard return? And how many are there? Well, from the Home tab of the ribbon, here in Microsoft Word, we have the ability in the paragraph group to turn on what is called your show hide. It's kind of giving us what WordPerfect did with the reveal formatting. It's not quite as great, but what this allows you to do is to see all non-printing characters. So every time that you press your space bar, you press your tab key, you press enter, those are non-printing characters that are there. They're physically a space. So we need to understand where those spaces are so that if something's not working correctly with our formatting, it's probably because of a character that's there, like this hard return in the middle of these two paragraphs. If I want to get rid of that hard return, I have two choices. It depends on where I want my cursor to end up, which, by the way, your cursor is that blinking bar. Wherever that blinking bar is where your data is going to go if you type or whatever action you do. There's two choices, as I said. One is I could press backspace. Backspace always moves you back one. Let me show you that example. So if I press backspace, it's going to move up that paragraph, so there's no space in between, but it puts my cursor after the previous paragraph. So just so you can see, if depending on where you want your mouse to end up. Well, I'm going to undo that by Control Z, undo, to put it back. If I press my delete key, delete deletes anything to the right. Backspace deletes anything to the left. So if I press my delete, it's going to delete that space. So you have to think about where do you want your cursor to end up to figure out which choice is going to be the better one. Not that you can't move to a different location, but just so you're aware how that kind of works. So if I have something that I want to get rid of, I can select it, I could backspace, or I can delete. So here I have another hard return on this document that I don't need that extra space. I want to get rid of that. Another way to do that is to select it, because it's physically an object, even though we can't see it. I can see the character because I'm show hiding right now. But if I select that empty space, I can actually press delete or backspace to get rid of it that way as well. All depends on how you want to do things. Keep in mind, this is a Microsoft program, so we always get multiple ways to do the same things. So I just wanted to cover that show hide with you, because sometimes people are, wondering, why can't I do that? Why is that extra space there? What's going on? This show hide can help you see things that you normally don't see. It is also beneficial when it comes to page breaks, which I'll talk about page breaks towards the end of the session. But for right now, I'm going to click that show hide icon again, just to turn it back off again. Although those characters are still there, I can't see them. But if I wanted to get rid of the spacing in between these two paragraphs, I can select that empty space, press delete or backspace, and it will get rid of that extra space. Even though you can't see that it's there, it's really there. So let's actually get into a little bit more when it comes to selecting your data, kind of working with this data. When we are selecting, it doesn't matter what you're selecting or how you're selecting it. I can click and drag or whatever the case might be. As soon as you release your mouse, you get the mini toolbar. The mini toolbar gives you the most common features for whatever you're selected on, like formatting. So we can actually use our bold, italic, change our font. We can apply bullets. We can even do line spacing from here. So these are going to be your most common options when you select text here in Word. Now, of course, these are also located, all of these but the new comment are located actually up on the home tab of the ribbon. But just so you're aware, it's easier to use the mini toolbar depending on, of course, what it is that you want to be doing for formatting. But you can, of course, just go to the ribbon and apply things. So in your handout, it's going to talk about your mouse shape. So just like with Excel, your mouse shape is going to change as you move it around. If I'm up in the ribbon, it's the mouse pointer, which I have mine a larger size so you can see it as I move around. If I'm over in the left margin, I get the arrow pointing to the right. If I have my cursor blinking, that's going to be that solid line. Used to be an I-beam, now it's a solid line. So when you are, that's your cursor, but when I have my mouse shape, that's going to be the I-beam. And that allows you then to click and drag to select or click wherever you want to go. So watch wherever your mouse is when you go to click, because sometimes we don't always pay attention to that. We think wherever our cursor is where we're supposed to be at, but sometimes we put our mouse someplace and we think we clicked, but we didn't. So make sure you click so your cursor goes where it really should be before you start typing again. Okay, so your mouse shape is going to change depending on where you are and what you're doing. So what I'm going to do with this document is I'm going to apply some formatting, and I'm going to start out at the very top. And oh, by the way, keyboard shortcuts, just like Excel. If I am at the bottom of my document, I can do a Control Home, or no matter where I am in my document, Control Home always jumps you to the top of page 1. Control End jumps you to the bottom of the last page. You, of course, can be using your page up, page down keys, just like you can in any other of your other programs to be moving up and down. Or, of course, you have your scroll bars. Or in a minute, you're going to be able to use the navigation pane. So keep an eye on my navigation pane as I do the next couple of steps here with some formatting. So I'm going to apply some formatting, because typically what I do is I come in and I type everything in. Then I come and format my data. So I'm going to format now to put this in a more legible format. I'm going to select that first paragraph using Disk Defragmenter. And this is actually the title of this document, of this Word document. So what I'm going to do is on my home tab of the ribbon, I'm going to go to my styles group. Instead of me having to click B for bold, change my font size, change my font, change the font color, that could be about 10 clicks. Instead, I use styles, and I live and breathe by my styles, by the way. I use these religiously every single day in Word. So this is going to be the title. So what I'm going to do is go to the title style that is built in based on my current formatting, my current theme, and a few other things that I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to click on this icon in the styles group called title. It formats it with the Calibri heading size 28. You can see that in the font group. Then I'm going to go to my different headings that I want to have throughout my document. And I'm going to select some of these headings just to give you an idea as to what's going to happen over in the navigation pane. I'm going to select this removing unneeded files, and I'm going to use a style again, and I'm going to choose heading 1. What that does is it reformats this data to be more of a heading for the content underneath it. And it formatted it with the Cambria heading size 16, and it's a blue font. It did that by default. And I could say and all day because it does so many different things. It added that heading to my navigation pane. I'll show you how to use those in a minute. Now, let's say that I have some other information that I want to add into being a heading again. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to say that I want this to open disk defrag, or disk cleanup, I mean. I want that to be a heading as well, but I want it to be a heading 2. I'm going to go to my styles and click on heading 2. It changes the formatting once again, and it's consistently using the blue font. Okay, and notice what it did in the navigation pane. It automatically added that heading 2 to the navigation, and it indented it under the heading 1. So I would go throughout my document and I would keep adding in whatever's going to be a heading 1, a heading 2, a heading 3, etc. I would be applying those as I go throughout my data. So I'm going to select one more just to give you an idea. I'm going to go back up to the top where I put in the title, and I'm going to say I want that to be a heading 1 instead of the title, because I might have a cover page or something. So I'm going to select that data again, and I'm going to change that to a heading 1. When I do that, it automatically puts that as a new heading in my navigation pane. As I start building this document, if I end up with 20 pages, I can navigate my pages to the specific section that I want by clicking on the headings in the navigation pane. So if I want to go to this topic called to open disk cleanup, I click on it and it navigates me directly to that category within my document. Hence its name, navigation pane. You can use it to navigate throughout your document based on the styles, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. And one of my favorite things is, let me add in one more heading, and I'm going to do it as a heading 2 under this using disk defrag. And I'm going to select this open disk defragmenter, and I'm going to do that as a heading 2. Now I have 2 heading 1s, 2 heading 2s, but I just changed my mind on how I want this document organized. I decided that I want removing unneeded files to be a topic before using disk defragmenter. I don't have to copy or cut and paste and things like that. And in this case, I would be doing a cut and then going where I want it and pasting it. Instead, I do it in my navigation pane. So I'm going to go to my navigation pane. I'm going to take this removing unneeded files. I'm going to drag it in front of using disk defragmenter, and it just rearranged my entire document. So I use that navigation pane every day. I use styles so that I don't have to work so hard on my formatting. Those styles will then become part of my navigation pane, and they become part of your table of contents if you're going to do that when you get done with your document. Just so you know, they have several different benefits. The biggest benefit for me is the formatting. I don't want to have to select all my headings and manually format them. Although I could, I don't want to, because then I'm not always consistent and it takes too much time. But I do want to talk about a little bit of formatting, because we want to understand what Microsoft Word does by default. So back kind of to that paragraph formatting I was talking about earlier, I'm going to select my heading 1, And you can see right away that it highlights the heading 1 icon in the styles. And you can see that there's an extra space above this paragraph, not below it. There's a little bit below, but not much, but there's a lot of space above this paragraph. By default, with that heading 1, it's automatically adding extra space above, so nothing can appear during that through that space. Now, how do I know that and how do I manage that? One way is going to the paragraph group. If I go to the paragraph group on the bottom row, there's an icon called line and paragraph spacing. If I click on that drop down, you can see that currently it's on a 1.15 line spacing. And I'll explain the difference here in a second. But I'm sure you're familiar with, in school, we always did double or triple spacing. That's what that's referring to, because they said it had to be 2 pages. So we double or triple space. So that's how we can manage that spacing in between every line. But this paragraph spacing, you can see down at the bottom that it says remove space before paragraph. That's if I want to get rid of it. Otherwise, I could add additional space below the paragraph. If I want to modify any of that or all of it, I can click where it says line spacing options to open up a dialog box that gives me several choices. If you look towards the bottom, kind of in the middle towards the bottom and the spacing, by default, the heading 1 style has 12 points above the actual text, 12 points of space above it. And then you can see that it's got line spacing of 1.15. It even gives you a preview down below so you can see exactly what is it doing. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to click cancel because I'm not making any changes. What about this second paragraph? If I select that second paragraph, as I pointed out earlier, it actually has space underneath where there's not a hard return in between those 2 paragraphs. Instead, there's 2. It's really just 2 paragraphs with that spacing after. How do I know that? I can see it when I select it. Also, if I go back to that same icon for line spacing and paragraph spacing, I can see that it says remove spacing after. That's because there is spacing there. Or I could add spacing before the paragraph. If I need to modify the spacing or get rid of it, I could go into that line spacing options. But by default, when we are typing text, it is using what is called the normal style. The normal style uses the default font of Calibri size 11, and the line spacing is 1.15, and it applies paragraph spacing on the bottom of the paragraph, 10 points by default. So I can see that after the paragraph, it's leaving 10 points of space till the next paragraph. So it's great that the computer is doing all of that work for us. We don't have to do that. I'm going to click cancel to keep that. So when we are typing information in, we don't have to be pressing enter to leave another space, because if we do, it's actually leaving double space, and we don't want it to do that. So like in this case, in between these paragraphs where I have that empty space, if I don't want that empty space, I need to delete it out, because we have to be careful with all those extra spaces where we put in those extra hard returns that we do by default. Okay, so here with the way Word formats everything for us, it makes it a lot easier for reading. They really kind of thought about what should the default font be? What should the default paragraph spacing be? What should the line spacing be? Now, let me explain that line spacing. I'm going to go back to this paragraph up at the top. And by the way, I don't even have to select the paragraph. I just have to be within the paragraph. So I clicked my cursor to be blinking somewhere in the paragraph. Then I can go back to the paragraph group. From here, I have several things I can do, but first I'm going to do the line spacing. If I click on that icon again for the line spacing and paragraph spacing, as I hesitate, I get a live preview so I could see what this would look like if I changed it. So if I am on 3.0, that's 3 spaces. So as you can see from the paragraph, it's separating things by 3 spaces. So it's pretty cool how we can visually see that with that live preview. Now I'm not really going to change that spacing. I want to keep this. So I'm going to just click off that. And another thing that I want to talk about is by default, all your text and everything aligns to the left-hand side of the page. What if you don't want it to be at the left-hand side? Or what if you want it to be full justified, where it lines up with the left margin and the right margin? We can do that by going back to that paragraph group. On the bottom row, you can see your left. We have our center, we have right justified, and we have full. So left is what it does by default. If I go to center, it's going to center the entire paragraph. Once again, I don't have to select the paragraph. I just have to be inside the paragraph. If I do right justified, it's lining it up to be right aligned based on my right margin by default. And then I have full justify, where if, like in a magazine or a newspaper, where it uses the full justify, where it automatically lines up on the left and the right margin. When you use that, it may need to put in extra spaces in between your characters. Sometimes it will add more spacing because it's trying to even things out. Okay. But of course, by default, we get left justified. So when it comes to what Microsoft Word does by default, when you look at the styles group, when I am within this paragraph, you can see that it's on normal. Normal is what it does by default. So normal includes the 1.15 spacing, the 10 points after the paragraph. It includes the Calibri body size 11 font, and that's all it does. But just so you're aware, we have a special way that we can instantly change the formatting in your document here in Microsoft Word. And I'm just going to briefly show that to you right now. And that's by going to the Design tab of the ribbon. From the Design tab, we have what are called document formatting options. So by default, on the left-hand side here, you can see this document style set. So it can change the styles that you are using, including what you have by default for normal, your title, your heading 1, heading 2, or any of the other styles. As I hesitate on these choices, you can see a live preview as to what they would look like if I decided to use one of these other document formats. I sometimes like the computer to do the work for me. So if I'm going to be organizing things based on headings and I'm doing a WBS outline, a work breakdown structure, I want to have 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.2.1, etc. That's built in. So if I use the styles, it automatically is going to update my document where I had used those styles. I see people work way, way, way too hard on formatting. We want to let the computer do the work for us. I feel it's important to let the computer do the work. But isn't it crazy how many choices we have? Now I'm going to click on this one, which is called shaded. I can see the name of it when I hesitate on it because each one of these style sets has a name. When I click on it, it updates my entire document to match whatever the formatting was for that new style set. If I go back to the home tab of the ribbon, when I'm in the first paragraph, I had a heading 1. I can see in my styles that I can get that little preview on the icon to see that it's a heading 1. It's still using the Calibri body size 11, but if I go to the line spacing, it's using the 1.15, and then it has spacing before the paragraph because it's telling me I could remove the space before the paragraph. So you always want to know, where do I go to find what's happening and to change it? This is going to be your favorite place to go because this is really what's controlling all of that. You know how to do bold, you know how to do italics, you know how to change your font size. These are some very unique features that we have here in Microsoft Word. So I want you to kind of be able to understand, where should I go to find those features? So everything updated, even this heading 2. The heading 2 by default is now using a lighter blue color, and it's using all caps, by the way. It's using all caps. So as you can see, instead of it being title case or the way that it looked before, it now is using uppercase text. That, of course, can easily be changed, but just so you're aware that that's what it's doing with this style. If I change my mind, I can simply go back to the Design tab. I can go back and choose any of the other options that I want to use. So if I want to use a different choice, all I have to do is find the one that I want to use, click on it, and my document's going to update automatically. Okay. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the font group. The only thing on the font group that I really want to mention here today is that title case, where we have title case and we have lowercase, we have uppercase. If I select the very first paragraph in my document, that removing unneeded files, I can go to the font group, and in the top row, I can click on the change case icon. And from that drop down, I could have sentence case, which it only capitalizes the first letter of the first word. I could have lowercase, I could have uppercase, capitalize each word, or I can do toggle case where it does the opposite of what it actively is. So depending on what you want, click on the choice and it will update it automatically for you. You don't have to do it manually. Okay. And then a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up when it comes to formatting is very popular is to use bullets or numbering. What's the difference? Well, bullets are more of a symbol. And of course, numbers are either numbers or letters, but can be other things, Roman numerals, those kind of things. But why would you use one over the other? That's always the question. If you're just giving a list of things, you would do bullets. If you want somebody to follow step by step, you give them numbers. All you have to do is select your text that you want to apply the bullets or the numbering to, either from the mini toolbar or from your paragraph group. You can choose bullets or numbering. If I click on the icon for bullets, it's going to give me the default bullet, which is a dot. That's all it is. If you look at my ruler up at the top, it has actually changed my tab settings, which I'm going to mention here in just a second. But just so you can see, it did that. If I want to add something to this, I could go to wherever I want to add the new item. So if I want to add something where this data is right now, I can just simply press enter to move it down and then add in my new text. So it's real easy to add things in. Otherwise, if I go to the very last bulleted item and press enter, it's going to automatically give me another bullet. If I don't want that bullet, I can select that area and delete it. Just like you do with anything else, we can delete that out. A different option would be numbering. If I select this text and I want to apply numbers, I can click on the numbering icon. By default, it will give me the number and then a dot. That's what it does by default. If I add anything or delete anything, like if I go to any of these current lines and I delete the line out, it renumbers everything for me automatically. Or if I add something in, just like with the bullets, it's going to add the next number automatically, depending on where you were at the time. Okay. But I want to talk more about these bullets here for a second. I'm going to come back and select these again. I can't change them if I don't select all the lines. You have to select all of them together to change all of it at the same time. And what I want to do is talk about the ruler. What it is doing by default is it's actually indenting where the text goes and where the bullet itself goes. I can modify that by going to the ruler and hesitating on my different, they're basically little icons. We have what is called a hanging indent. We have a first line indent and we have a left indent. I can move these left and right depending on where I want things organized. How do I want these to line up? So we can be moving things left or right depending on what it is you want to have lined up where. There's a little bit in your handout on using tab stops. And that's what these basically are doing, is similar to a tab stop, where we can use the ruler to control where we are going within that tab. So we're controlling where the bullet is going to appear and where the text appears. So if you want them closer together or further apart, use your icons on the ruler. As you hesitate on your mouse on these icons, it will give you a screen tip telling you the name of it. So we have a hanging in, or a left indent, sorry, we have a hanging indent, first line indent, and a left indent. So those are three icons. When they're put together, like if I click in this paragraph, when they're put together, they look like an hourglass with a rectangle on the bottom. So if I want to change my first paragraph, this after the heading, if I want to modify this paragraph to be indented, I can press my tab key, and by default, it indents my first line. So that down triangle up on the ruler is the first line indent. That's called the first line indent. So it indents by default to every ½ inch. If I press my tab key again, it indents again, but it's going to indent the first line and the rest of the paragraph. My cursor is in front of the first line. If I press my backspace, it's going to even that paragraph out. And notice my ruler, it's all lined up for the left indent. This is my, oops, sorry. This is my, I got to get my mouse on the right spot here. This is my left indent that I can move left and right by hesitating on that bottom square. If I want to put it all back to the left margin, press your backspace and it will back it all up. It's pretty cool how all that flows together, and you can watch your ruler to see how that all changes for you. Also, with that paragraph formatting, if I'm within this first paragraph and I decide that I want my right margin to come in more just for this paragraph, I can go to the top right of my ruler, and there's a little triangle shape. That is called your right indent. If I click and drag that to 4½ inches on the ruler, it's going to indent that first paragraph to have a right indent of 4½. If I change my mind, I could always drag it back or put it wherever I want it to actually be. But the gray areas on your ruler up at the top are outside of your page margins. So everything within the white section of the ruler is where your data is going to go by default. Okay. Lots of choices, but it doesn't always mean we should change things. It all depends on what it is that you need to do. But just so you're realizing that when it comes to working with the ruler and having tab stops, it does the ½ inch mark by default. So if I type text in and then I say this, I can just keep putting things in as I press my tab key. As soon as I'm done, I press enter and move down. It's going to do that by default. Okay. But in your handout, I gave you a little bit more on using the ruler and using different tab stops. I wanted to include that only because a lot of people do ask me about that. We don't have time to cover all of that today, but I wanted to make sure I included that. So when we are doing numbers or bullets, it is changing your ruler. And like I said, you can always modify it if you need to. But if you wanted to change your numbers to be in letters or Roman numerals, you can select all your numbered items, then go back to the Home tab, click on the down arrow next to the icon for numbering. From that drop down, you can see some of the built-in choices that you have. As you hesitate, you'll get a live preview to see what it would look like before you choose it. So depending on what exactly you want, there's more than what you get by default. Okay. Sometimes there's like gazillion different choices. We just have to find the one that's going to work best. So I don't do a lot of copying, or I should say cutting and pasting here in Word. As I said, I use the navigation pane to kind of move things around. Even if it's a heading 3 and I want to move it to a heading 2 or whatever, we could just click and drag and move things around, or select your text or be within the paragraph or the line and then apply whatever formatting it is that you need. Lots of choices depending on what it is. One last thing about these bulleted items. If I wanted to sort these bulleted items, I can select these bulleted items. It's going to look at the first letter and then look for unique letters as it goes across. But in this paragraph group on the top row, we have the icon AZ, just like in Excel. You can click on that to sort your data. So I'm going to sort the paragraphs of data that I have selected, and I'm going to click OK. And now it resorted this information to have add new text come first. So just so you know, that is an option here in Microsoft Word. It's crazy what we can actually do in this program. It's pretty cool. And then just a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. In your handout, it has all of the formatting things that we were talking about, plus a few more. Talks about your line spacing, your paragraph alignments, your indents, things like that, your paragraph spacing, as well as your styles, and using your bullets and numbering. But what I wanted to get to right now is sometimes we will use tabs, like I was doing at the bottom of my document here. Sometimes we apply tab stops, and then we decide, you know what, I really should put that into a table. Like you have your Excel with your columns and rows, we could take existing data and turn it into a table, or we could start with a brand new table where you can have columns and rows of information to organize your data. I'm going to show you, because a lot of people may have done a table before, similar to an Excel spreadsheet, but I'm going to select this line of text that I actually did the tab stop with. And what I'm actually going to do is turn this into a table. I select the data first, then I'm actually going to go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. And from here, I'm going to go to Table. From the drop-down, I'm going to choose Convert Text to Table. It can look for tab stops. It can look for dashes, dots. It can look for parentheses, whatever characters you want it to look for to identify that you want to separate your data. It automatically recognized that I had tabs, so it's marked on tabs. All I have to do is click OK, and it now has this data in a table. I know I'm in a table because I can see the lines like an Excel spreadsheet. Plus, when you look at the ribbon, you're going to have table tools, just like Excel, where we have a design tab where we can change the formatting of our table. And let me show you, if I add more, I go to the end and I can press tab to keep adding more rows as I type data in. And this is using a banded rows where every other row is a different shaded color. You have lots of different choices if you look at the design tab of the ribbon. We also have a layout tab, which allows you to do your spacing and your organizing. You can add additional rows or columns or delete them. It's kind of crazy what it allows us to do and keep things organized, because in Microsoft Word, everything aligns to the left. So a table is going to help you organize that information a little bit better. Okay. And then another thing that I want to mention is when you are creating your Word document and you get to the bottom of a page, as you're typing information, if you continue going, it automatically starts more pages. You get to the bottom of one page, it goes to the next page. Those are page breaks, but it's automatically doing those. If you have a place within your document that you want to purposely put in a page break, you can do that a couple of different ways. One way is click in front of the paragraph that you want to have start a new page. One way is the keyboard shortcut Control-Enter. That will automatically move it down to start a new page. Or you can go to the ribbon to the Layout tab. And from the Layout tab on the left-hand side, in the Page Setup group, we have breaks, where then I could choose to do a page break. The same thing with Control-Enter. It will move it down to start the next page. So we can force pages by just inserting a page break. Now, if I go back and turn on my Show Hide, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to sort. My Show Hide, you can see that it automatically put that page break in there. If I decided I don't want it to break there, I can delete that page break by selecting it and pressing delete or backspace. So it can always be removed if you add a page break. Okay. But I'm going to do the control enter and force it to become a new page again. So it gives me that page break. And when it comes to setting things up for printing or sharing with other people, I do print, but a lot of times for me, I'm actually doing page numbers and things like that because I'm going to share this, and I'm usually sharing it as a PDF. So this particular document has 2 pages, not that many pages, but I still might want to put page numbers. How do we get page numbers on this? It's easy, actually. If we go to the insert tab of the ribbon, the insert tab, because we want to insert something, we're going to go to the header and footer group, and we're going to click page number. You can choose where you want the page numbers to appear, top of the page, bottom of the page, within the margin, etc. I usually do bottom of the page. There are built-in page numbering options. They're pre-formatted, so you don't even have to worry about formatting them. I'm going to choose this one called brackets 2. When I click on that, it automatically adds a footer to the bottom of every page with the page number, and it has a line and brackets around the page number itself. You can have some pretty fancy things here in Microsoft Word without having to do any work yourself. You click on an icon and that's it. If my data changes and we add more pages, which by the way, I just double clicked within my document. When I was in my footer, I can see I'm in my footer when I added this page number. I'm in the footer because at the bottom left it says footer. Plus, if you look at my ribbon, I have a contextual tool. Because I'm in the footer, I get my header and footer tools. If I just double click anywhere in my document, it will automatically put me back into my document out of the footer. But if I add in any more page breaks, it's going to automatically continue with the page numbering for me. Or if I rearrange things, it automatically renumbers all of my pages. So that's what I love about Microsoft Word, is it has all this automation built into it. But there's one other thing I want to show you, and that's, I'm going to control end and jump down to the bottom here to a free space for a second. You know how I keep saying that by default, everything aligns to the left? What if you want something to be centered and you want it to go in, kind of towards the middle of the page? Notice my cursor right now. My cursor has an I-beam with lines underneath it. If I double click, it's going to put my cursor wherever my mouse shape was at. So it put my cursor in the middle centered. So now if I type, it's going to automatically put it in the middle. Okay. If I take my mouse up here and I double click, it's going to put my mouse there. Or if I take my mouse over here and double click, it's going to put it over there. It's called click and type. So it allows you, instead of having to press enter a million times to move down in things and then center, just put your cursor where you want it to go and double click. It's pretty cool. And one other thing that I forgot to mention, let me get back over to the left here. If I start typing, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country, blah, blah, blah. You know how you keep typing like that? I didn't type a capital N. The computer did that for me. Or if I type 1ST and press my space bar, it's going to automatically superscript the ST. It understands 2ND, 3RD, etc. It understands all of that. That's all part of the built-in autocorrect features in Microsoft Word. It does a lot of work for us, so we don't have to work so hard. But when you're ready to save something as a PDF, you want to do a print preview just to make sure everything is going to look the way that you want to. So you're going to want to go to your file menu, then click print so that you get a live preview to see what everything looks like. Then if you're ready to go, you could save it as a PDF or physically print it on paper or whatever you might need. If I want to save it as a PDF, My go-to is to go to export on the left-hand side. Then I can be on PDF and then click create PDF. It takes me into my save as dialog box. My file type down at the very bottom where it says save as type is a PDF. I could give it a different name, give it a different location, and then simply click publish, and it would save it as a PDF file for me. So make sure it's print ready before you do that. Make sure your page breaks are all in there. And by the way, make sure you do your spell check. Spell check, just like any other program, keyboard shortcut is F7, but it's always on your review tab of the ribbon. Also on the review tab is a thesaurus. So if you have a word that I've tried to use the same word twice in a sentence and I wanted to find a synonym for it, go to the word, do a right click, and you can hesitate on synonyms and it will give you synonyms for the word that you're on. I do that in Outlook as well. So lots of great tools. It's really just a matter of, checking out your choices on the ribbon. If you see something that you're not quite sure what it is, you can always go to the search up at the top, type in what you're looking for. So if I'm looking for mail merge, as an example, it's going to bring up all topics related to mail merge. So if you're having a question on using any of the features, that is highly recommended to do that. And that will give you the information that you're looking for. You can open up the help. Okay. Well, that was all I was going to cover today. Did we have any questions come in?
We've got one question here, so we'll jump into that one, and it kind of goes back to when you were talking about templates. So you mentioned that Word has a lot of built-in templates, which are nice. I mean, I've used these myself, and they do save a lot of work and make your document look good. What if you want to create a template? You have your own letterhead or your own something, and you want to actually build one.
Okay, so I'm going to open up this report. And I'm going to say that this is actually, I redesigned this. I put in, the current date. I put in my title. I changed it to, be my own. Now we want to save this as our own template. We can do that by doing a save as. If we go back to our file menu, on the left-hand side, click save as. And this is in your handout, by the way, talking about the templates and the save as types. Then I can click browse. If I don't see the folder that I want to go to, I can click browse, navigate to wherever I would want to put it. But the key to this is down at the bottom where it says save as type. When you click on that drop down, it's going to show you all different kinds of ways that you can save your document besides the normal DOCX. One of your choices is going to be Word template. When you choose Word template, by default, Microsoft thinks you want that template to appear in your templates folder. So if you look at the top of mine's going to my documents, to my custom office templates. But if I want to share this with other people, I'm going to probably change mine to be my OneDrive. I'm going to put it in my SharePoint. So maybe I want it to go in my OneDrive. If I choose my OneDrive, I can then save it as this template, and I'm just going to call it business template. And then I'm going to click save so that other people would be able to have access to that. So create whatever it is, then just save it as a template yourself. Okay, hope
Awesome.
that helped.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions that I see here. If anybody has any final questions, certainly throw them out there. A couple of people have asked about the handout. Where do you get that? So we have a training library on our website, which is compuworks.biz. So that's compuworks.biz. If you forget that, you can just Google CompuWorks and you'll find it. Just navigate to the training library. You'll see recorded versions of this webinar. Probably will be up tomorrow, and all of the past webinars that we've run to are all there. We're building up a little bit of a collection there. So feel free to share those if you think it'll be helpful for anybody. The more the merrier as far as sharing this content. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I think as final word here, just wanted to remind you that We do have some future classes coming up, Microsoft Visio, which is a little bit of a more specific kind of, I won't call it a niche product, but you really have to have kind of a specific need for that. A lot of like organizational charts, things like that are built with Visio, flow charts, things like that is how I think of Visio anyway. I'll be in the training, so I'm sure I'll learn plenty next time. But if you're interested in that topic, that's August 23rd. We've got the next level of Word on the 27th of September. And then we're going to be doing a Windows 11 introduction course on October 25th. So feel free to sign up. The registrations are open for all of those right now. You can, again, you can register for all of those just by going to our website. You'll see a page that says upcoming training. Just click on the registration link and you won't have to worry about it. You'll get notified and it'll just be on your calendar, nice and easy. So tomorrow we'll probably send out the email with the survey link. Please feel free to give us whatever feedback you have. In particular, if you have any suggestions for upcoming sessions, we're scheduling into late fall now, so would love to know what's on your mind and what we can add to the agenda here. So great session again, Jolynn. Thanks so much.
Thank
And
you.
thanks, Jacob. Great job. And thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.